I am Michelle McPherson, and this is The Michelle McPherson Show, the only internet marketing podcast dedicated to answering your burning business questions. Find us and submit your own questions at FromIdeaToEmpire.com. And now for today's episode. Hey folks, Michelle McPherson here with a quick news update. We have three very important pieces of news from Pinterest that I wanted to share with you today. The first thing is that Pinterest has introduced their own version of a hover pin it button. Now, if you remember, I actually have my own hover pin it WordPress plugin. And how it works is that when someone is browsing your webpage, if they kind of roll their mouse over one of the images, a little Pinterest button will appear. And when the mouse is off the image, then that won't be there. It's a better Pinterest button than a static one that just stays there, because that movement of there not being the pin it button and then it going away catches the eye a little bit more. It reminds people, oh yeah, I've got a Pinterest account, I should pin this great image, right? So it's a great tool no matter how you implement it. The news today is that Pinterest has their own code to do that. It is not as simple as a WordPress plugin, so you need to have a little bit of tech skills or maybe a developer to implement it for you, but it may be an option for you if you don't use WordPress, so you can't use one of the available plugins like mine, or if you just don't want to be using plugins and prefer to hard code things into your site. So take a look at that Pinterest implementation of a hover pin button. The other news is that Pinterest has introduced rich article pins. So we know that rich data, that is results that are displayed with more than just the result. So let me give you an example. You search Google for a recipe, and sometimes you'll see results that have the number of stars that the recipe received right there in the Google search results. Or we all know about the Google authorship markup, where you'll search for a search term, and then you might see a little picture of the author in those Google search results. Those are examples of rich data being extracted from the web pages and then able to be displayed on Google. Well, Pinterest has the same capability. It's just called rich pins, right? And what they're able to do is take some of the data that is on your website and pull it into one of your pins. So we've seen a lot of this. A good example is anything on Etsy that is pinned onto Pinterest will have a little stripe with the price on it. And they also introduced a couple of months ago, if the price on something that you had previously pinned dropped on something that supported that rich pin price data, they would alert you, Pinterest would, and say, oh, this thing that you pinned 2 months ago is actually less expensive now. So there's different ways that Pinterest can display this data to make it stand out more to people. They have rich data for recipes. And so that will show some of the recipe data automatically in the pin. This is good because it makes your pins more visible. It is, again, something that you'll need a little bit of technical expertise or a developer to hard code into your site, so that then when that information is pinned from your site, it can pull that data from it. The latest thing that they have that uses that rich data is rich article pins. And what those will do is, instead of just pinning, say, a picture from an article that you read, and then maybe you type in, this is a great article on blah, 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 it will actually display a portion of the article along with the image. It bolds like the title. So it makes it a much more visually interesting pin than just a plain picture, particularly with an article pin, because, you know, you might be reading an article about the government and it'll be a picture of, say, the president, and that might not really give a full idea of what the article is about or that it's interesting, because it's just like a stock photo of the president, right? So these rich pins, these rich article pins, will help the stickiness on Pinterest of articles that people are pinning. It also gives Pinterest kind of an out into becoming a read it later kind of service, where you can store the things that you want to look at later on that you don't have the time to read now. So that's something to consider as well. You can implement rich article pins on your site. There is code that you will need to include, and again, developer or some tech skills. And then you need to apply to Pinterest to be approved to have these rich article pins displayed. It is a little bit cumbersome right now. They are moving quickly with it, and I expect it to roll out to more sites or to become more available pretty soon. Now, the final thing that I wanted to talk about was promoted pins. So this is the idea of running ads on Pinterest, right? We aren't sure how they're going to allow you as an advertiser to target. We're not sure how much it's going to cost. We're not sure any of those things, but we do know that they're rolling out a beta they already have with a few select companies running promoted pins. Now, this is, I think, the most exciting thing to happen in pay-per-click, for me at least, since Google AdWords was actually, a lot more of a viable thing for the average Joe to work on. I haven't been super into Facebook to turn Facebook users into buyers, or Twitter promotional pins or promotional tweets, because people don't really go on those sites so much to buy things, right? But Pinterest, literally, people go on Pinterest to find things to buy. That is the purpose of the site. So if you're in e-commerce, if you're in retail, keep a close eye on the way that Pinterest promoted pins is going to develop. I think that this will be massive. And like I said, they're running a beta right now with a few select advertisers. Very, very interesting to see how this develops, how we'll be able to target people, how much it's going to cost per impression or per click, and just how they'll structure the whole program. But it's going to be huge if you are in one of those retail e-commerce industries, because literally it's the only site that people go on to find things to buy and save and share. So it is a huge opportunity for people in those markets. So keep those 3 cool Pinterest features in mind. You can implement the hover pin it with a little bit of code. You can include Pinterest rich markup on your site to get recipe data, price data, Pinterest article pins included in the pins that come from your site. And Pinterest promoted pins are coming soon to a retailer like you. Head on over to socialmediadaily.com. Our team can take care of your entire Pinterest campaign from start to finish so that you can start taking advantage of these advancements on Pinterest and the fact that it is a site so dedicated to finding and buying things that people love. So if you've got things that people love, you need to be on Pinterest. We can help you at Social Media Daily. And thanks for listening to this episode of The Michelle McPherson Show. See you next time. Bye-bye.